All right, everyone. Happy Inauguration Day. Welcome to Reality Check. It is the Wednesday, middle of the week, midday, but Inauguration Day edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's WURD. Welcome to the program. We are broadcasting to you live from Washington, D.C., as you see the nation's capital in the backdrop there. But we are in a very frigid and very windy day in Washington, D.C. It's about 40 degrees or so, but that's always Inauguration Day. The sun is coming out. The sun is coming out. And President Trump, number 45, is officially out, has officially left Washington, D.C. He is on Air Force One en route to Florida. Should be dropping there soon. And so that era has ended. And in a couple of hours, we will have the official swearing-in ceremony of President Joe Biden as the 46th President of the United States, and also Vice President Kamala Harris. She will be sworn in. We will be covering all of that live here on WURD. You can listen to it. You can also watch it. We'll be having our media partners providing live feed of those ceremonies here on WURD. So we got you covered on that. As you know already, we're providing live analysis here throughout WURD, the home of Black Talk Media, just for you, tailored just for you. And we're proud to do that, happy to do that. And I don't know, what a feeling of relief. That's the only way to describe it. Everyone waiting to exhale since November, really waiting to exhale for the past several years. And that moment finally arrived with the departure of Donald Trump from Joint Air Force Base Andrews in Maryland, in suburban Maryland, about 10 miles outside of Washington, D.C. So I know a lot of you already watching that and waving your goodbyes or doing all sorts of other interesting, perhaps even nasty gestures. So it's all done. And now, so everyone's just waiting for the inauguration of President-elect Biden and also Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. It's soon to happen, everyone, and we're going to capture that here. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check. I'm here live on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, and WURD app as well. You can join us on WURD TV at youtube.com/onWURD and facebook.com/4WURD as well. Joining me now also in the Washington, D.C. area, the metropolitan D.C. area, is the Honorable Peter Groff, former Obama White House appointee, also former president of the Colorado State Senate, and a regular contributor here on Reality Check on WURD. Senator, how are you doing, sir?
Good, Charles. How are you? Happy inaugural day.
Yes, happy inaugural day to you. How do you feel? What's this moment like as we're watching all of this transpire? A lot of protocols have been broken by the outgoing president. However, we are getting word, we're seeing reports that he's left a note for the incoming president. And First Lady Melania Trump, who's also broken protocol, really no one inviting the new first couple in, but notes have been left. I know a lot of people are wondering what's in those notes, but how does this feel? How does this moment feel for you?
It was interesting on election night when I kind of knew what the numbers were going to be, talked to a lot of folks at DNC, folks who are connected to the campaign, so went to sleep that night feeling pretty good. When the networks then said that it actually was going to happen, that Joe Biden was going to be the next president, there was a really kind of eerily sense of relief. Had that same feeling this morning as I saw President Trump get on the helicopter and then get on Air Force One and then fly off. I was like, finally, we can now get back to true governance and trying to figure out the real issues of this country. I think what was shocking last night is when President-elect Biden and Vice President Harris arrived in Washington. They immediately went to the Lincoln Memorial for a national memorial service on COVID and talked about the now 400,000 deaths, and that number we got to under President Trump right before he left, and really talked about what that meant to the families, to the victims, and we have not had that moment of kind of national relief and engagement. And so that was wonderful. And I think at that point, I thought last night was, yeah, it's over, and it's time to get back to trying to become a more perfect union.
Yeah, it really is. What do you think? I want to also get your thoughts on and the contrast still stark between the two presidents, the one outgoing and the one incoming. Because yesterday, while incoming President Biden is engaged in reflection on the very hard times and the struggle that the country is going through, the outgoing president is busily handing down pardons. You know, so and pardons to many folks who are some of the most questionable characters in politics and in popular culture. So just the contrast there, I think, is just very stunning and very striking.
Well, I think a lot of people are waiting to see if that little Tiger King dude was going to get a pardon. He pulled up a limousine outside of his prison, but did not receive one.
No.
Yeah, look, I mean, all presidents do this at the end of the term, really at the end of kind of each year. They
Yeah.
have a number of pardons. But what President Trump did with the pardon power, what he has actually done with some of the pardons, even to folks like Kwame Kilpatrick, he commuted his sentence. But
Yeah.
some of the folks that he kind of rescued from themselves it was Trump, right? It was
Right.
incredibly Trumpian. The whole 4 years was incredibly Trumpian. So we shouldn't be surprised
No,
that he
not at
would
all.
abuse the pardon power
Yeah.
like he has. I think a lot of folks, and I did an internal poll, and you were part of this effort. I wanted to see what folks who I really trusted and whose political experience I really kind of rely on to see if he would actually pardon himself and his family. I think most people said that he would with a high number. I didn't think that he would.
No.
And then after January 6th, I was almost sure he wouldn't. Because
Yeah.
if he had done that, that's kind of an admission of guilt,
Yeah.
even if it's kind of a pre-pardon for something that you haven't been charged with. And so this was all Trump, and now we're done with that, and we can move on.
Hey Peter, what sort of notes should Joe Biden be hitting in this inaugural speech? What are you expecting from him?
Charles, you and I talked about this as we previewed the inaugural speech on our show, Texture,
Right.
which we post on Saturday mornings. And I think
Hmm.
both of us thought that he really needed to talk about the resilience of America, unity, kind of coming together as an American family. Not that that family has ever been perfect, right? Like all families, the American family and community is dysfunctional. But we need to begin to talk about why that is, and I think the incoming president can do that today. But certainly talk about resilience and the fact that
Hmm.
America has been down before. America has faced crises before. And every single time we've rallied around one another, rallied
Hmm.
around the principles and the values of this country, and moved this country forward. So I think that's what he'll hit today. I think it'll be a lofty speech. This is a guy who really understands not only the
Hmm.
values and principles, but comes at it from an incredibly emotional and passionate side. And I think you'll see that today as he talks about unity, talks about
Hmm.
resilience, and talks about moving forward from an incredibly dark age.
You know, Peter, let's talk about normalcy, right? Because I hear that take quite often. I've heard that especially become much more commonplace in the discourse leading up to this inauguration. People are talking about returning to normalcy. It was never normal to begin with, or not the kind of normal that we ever wanted. And that normalcy led to the election of Donald Trump. Do we really need to return to normalcy to make things work the way they need to work?
Well, you just asked about the traditions that
Hmm.
the outgoing president and the outgoing first lady have broken nearly the second 4 years ago that he placed his hand on the Bible in the same place that you'll see
Yeah.
President-elect Biden do the same thing. And that was very kind of un-American in what we have seen. And again, America exceptional, but not perfect.
Yeah.
And so we need to return to the fact where government at least moves forward. At least there is some type of governance that attempts to try and take an issue that we're dealing with and tries to solve it. We did not see that over the past 4 years. So from that standpoint, we do need to return to the normal way we do things. Can we do things better? Absolutely. Can we do
Got it.
things in a more efficient way? Absolutely. But we've got to get back to at least where we were and then move forward from there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting the way you put that. We're talking with Peter Groff, regular contributor here on Reality Check on WURD. You catch him on the roundtable every so often, and a lot of times we bring him back for special analysis, such as what we're doing today, our special inaugural day coverage here on WURD, particularly on Reality Check. I'm broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. Also, Peter joining me from the Metro D.C. area, and we are talking about inauguration. Peter also creator, executive producer, host of Texture, which I co-host with him. Texture, you can find that at the B Note, THEBE-note.com. We put that out every week. We came back at it this past weekend, this past Saturday. So you can catch him at Peter C. Groff, for more engagement and for more thoughts there. Your thoughts on, because I see you wearing your Kamala shirt.
My Kamala shirt.
Right. So your thoughts on Kamala Harris now, how she's arriving in this moment, your expectations for her. She's going to be a very powerful figure in Washington, D.C. as a tiebreaker. I mean, she holds her cards close, though. That's one thing I notice about her. She shouldn't be underestimated. She's very calculating, very shrewd, holds those cards close. There's a lot of very careful deliberation and calculation behind that smile and behind that laugh sometimes. She says she does not want to use that tiebreaker loosely. She's hoping that, hey, we can work things out. Democrats and Republicans can work things out and pass solid policy. So using the tiebreaker is really for her as a tool of last resort. But what are you expecting from her, Peter?
You've been in politics a long time, and you've met folks who have, when you met them, you knew that there was something different about them. The first time I engaged with now Vice President-elect Harris is we were both on the platform committee in 2008. Had the opportunity to sit next to her, had kind of heard about her as you kind of hear about kind of rising Black elected officials across the country. And then I could immediately tell that there was something special about her. And to your point, incredibly thoughtful, is not going to be out there where the president's going to have to call her in and say, hey, you can't say that. But incredibly strategic. As I said, when he picked her, the right pick for the right moment. She'll be an incredibly powerful figure, certainly a historical figure, but the power that she's going to derive is going to come from the president. What is Joe Biden going to put her in charge of? How is he going to use her skills? How is he going to use her unique relationship and the uniqueness of who Kamala Harris is? How is he going to use that? That's up to him. I think if he does it right, if he does it the way that President Obama used then Vice President Biden, you will have an incredibly powerful figure with all of the issues that this administration is facing. Certainly there is going to be several opportunities for Vice President Harris to take the lead on any number of things, either move it through the bureaucracy or move it through the Congress. And so I think you'll see him use her communication skills, her strategy skills, her smarts to move a number of things through the process. And one last thing before your next question. A lot of folks have talked about that Joe Biden is a creature of the Senate. And that's very true. He spent 30, 40 years there, but he hasn't been there in 12. His vice president was just there last week. So her relationships, I think, particularly with some of the moderate senators, I think is going to be key with folks that Joe Biden may not know. Kristen Sinema, he certainly knows Joe Manchin, but there's going to be a number of folks in that kind of new group of senators that he's never served with that Kamala Harris has a unique relationship with. And so I think you'll see that.
Right. We don't know the extent of that. To me, it's almost like a mystery, right? I think on some levels, the extent of Kamala Harris's relationships with the current Senate, with senators, with people who are there, and that's with people on both sides of the aisle. We don't have a whole lot of insight into that, or do we, Peter? I have wondered about that, and I think that's a place where people need to take Kamala Harris seriously. It's she didn't just accidentally fall into the vice presidency.
No.
There were a number of people, including Joe Biden, who thought, you know what, she's perfect for this position, and there are some specific reasons why. And it's got to be those relationships. Someone who used to be a creature of the Senate is going to appreciate someone else who can back him up, who is, just like you said, up until, like yesterday, was a creature of the Senate.
I have a couple of friends who serve in the Senate, and talk to them whenever I run into them, just kind of about what the Senate is like, what the personalities are like. And I heard incredible things about John McCain. I heard incredible things about Ted Kennedy. I heard incredible things about Kamala Harris. So you don't hear, and you're around D.C. enough where you pick up on things. There are some senators who most folks don't feel one way or the other about. There are some senators who are kind of beloved, respected. There are some senators who are hated, Ted Cruz.
Right.
And so
yeah, Ted Cruz is not liked at all on Capitol Hill.
No, by anyone. Ted Cruz
by
is
anyone.
Not by
Yeah, people do not. I don't think people understand that. People seriously just on a personal level do not like this dude. But I'm sorry, Peter.
And Josh Hawley may be quickly falling.
Yeah, Josh Hawley's another, right.
But you did not hear, you only heard good things and respectful things about a Senator Harris.
Okay.
And so I think that she'll be able to use that. This 50-50 margin is incredibly tight to try and get anything done. And I think whatever levers the Biden administration can use in that respect from former colleagues of the vice president, I think will help move some things along.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on that, Peter. I think it's very important to know. How do Black people, Peter? Because that's another conversation. I'm sure that it's already started. It's a continuous conversation. But how does the Black community manage their expectations, their demands, or our collective demands for Joe Biden, for the Biden-Harris administration? A lot of questions. I'd sparred with a few people yesterday on this program about the impressions of Biden working on issues that aren't perceived as Black issues, like immigration, for example, or climate crisis. How do we have that conversation? How do we manage those expectations?
I think one of the things I think we have to think about is Black folks, that everything that gets done on the left side of the margin is going to benefit Black folks. Immigration is not just an issue in terms of folks from South America. Immigration, when you look at it, a whole deals with the Caribbean as well, deals with African countries as well. We need to understand that. Climate change, if the planet burns up, Black people are burning too. It is a major issue for everybody.
Exactly.
This idea that there are kind of specific issues that the administration needs to work on, I agree, and certainly in terms of criminal justice stuff, I think that question of just broader equity in government and the policies that come out of government also have to be worked on. But there are issues that we don't necessarily think of as Black issues, as you just said, that are absolutely Black issues. And I think we need to, at this point, kind of broaden our understanding of what impacts us as a whole, and not just what is kind of termed a Black issue. I think everything that comes out of that building, if it's not done in an equitable way, we're going to be the folks who suffer because of that.
Very well stated, Peter Groff. Definitely, I'm going to let you go there. Peter Groff joining us for our special Inauguration Day coverage here on Reality Check. Peter, as always, a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much for the insights. Former president of the Colorado State Senate, former Obama White House appointee, and now creator, host of Texture. You can find, go to hashtag Texture, or you can find Texture at the B-Note, THEBE-Note.com every Saturday. You'll see me there with him as well. He takes lead on that program, and always have a wonderful time with wonderful conversations and interviews. Go to @PeterCGraw. Peter, thanks so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right, you do the same. Be safe out there. All right, let's take a break here on Reality Check. When we come back, we're supposed to continue our special Inauguration Day coverage. We're also supposed to be talking with Simon Clark, national security expert, an expert we've also talked to in the past about the threat of domestic terrorism. He's a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, and Center for American Progress is always looking out for us and providing us with some analysis and insights for our special Inauguration Day coverage. So we're expecting very shortly Simon Clark. He's coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thinking about retirement? Make sure a My Social Security account is a part of your plan. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can find out if you're eligible to receive benefits, compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates, view spousal benefit estimates, and more. Plan for your future. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We are continuing with our special Inauguration Day coverage here on Reality Check on WURD. It is Wednesday. It is midweek, midday, but it's also a very special day. It is inauguration. This is, you see the backdrop here behind me of the U.S. Capitol. Obviously, that's a photo, but that's exactly kind of how the weather looks in Washington, D.C. right now. Partly blue skies, some sun, but some clouds there. So a lot of uncertainty, of course, in the air. Things are definitely dark and bleak, but also a little sun shining through those clouds and giving us some reason for hope as well. The Bidens and also Kamala Harris, along with her husband, have arrived at the Capitol, have arrived at the U.S. Capitol. So that is happening right now. And a very limited, very, very limited audience. I don't think people understand how incredibly just sort of clear the spaces around the Capitol building. There are not a whole lot of people. I mean, basically the inauguration literally just being limited to as many people as possible. So you have the president and the new president and the new vice president. They are now, in fact, they're going up the steps of the U.S. Capitol. They're about to go inside the Capitol. They're doing that right now. With their husband and wife, with the First Lady and the first husband, Kamala Harris, to be the first woman vice president in the history of the union, and obviously the first black woman, or the first woman of black and South Asian descent. She is there, so now they're waving. They're waving as far as like live feed is telling us or showing us now, waving at folks before they head. And we're waiting on Simon Clark with the Center for American Progress. He should be joining us shortly. We were trying to reach him via Skype. May have to reach him other ways, but as we wait for him, he hasn't arrived yet. We will watch footage of the president, the new president, and the vice president entering the Capitol now. Many other people are probably watching this scene unfold. They're watching it on live TV as they're listening also to programs like Reality Check here on WURD, and they see how well armed and how well protected the U.S. Capitol is right now. Normally it is very well protected during an inauguration, but there's even more layers of security in Washington, D.C., inside and around the Capitol, everyone doing their best to make sure that what happened on January 6th does not happen again. Let's open up the phone lines while we try to reach them. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We'll just keep the phone lines open at the moment. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Would like to get your thoughts, get your reactions to the inauguration taking place, and also your expectations for this incoming Biden administration. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, a number of Senate confirmation hearings have been happening before inauguration has taken place. Those have been going on for a few days now. Republicans are, being the opposition that we expect them to be, being the fairly obstructionist opposition that we expect them to be, and disagreeing rather aggressively, or pushing back rather aggressively against Biden cabinet picks. So far, however, a lot of the conversation, at least during these hearings, has been, while it's aggressive, it's been respectful. There's a lot of back and forth, but it has been respectful, because we've seen cabinet hearings in recent years, particularly during the Trump presidency, become rather tumultuous. That is not the case, or at least that's not what we're seeing with these Senate confirmation hearings. Senate confirmation hearings to quickly fill up as soon as possible Biden's national security team. That includes the Secretary of Defense. That's going to be historic. It appears we will have our first black Secretary of Defense. So that's rather significant. Will be a black man who will be the Secretary of Defense. Also, confirmation hearings for Janet Yellen as Treasury Secretary, former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen. And also, there have been some contentious conversations or contentious confirmation hearing for the nomination of Andrew Mayorkas as Department of Homeland Security Secretary. And so Republicans, kind of repeating or regurgitating some of the issues that they had with him back in 2013 when they were confirming him as deputy of Department of Homeland Security under Jay Johnson, if you remember Jay Johnson, who was the first black head of the Department of Homeland Security. So there's some concerns that Republicans have about just the way he managed or what they're describing as intervention in some cases for some wealthy investors, getting them visas into the country. So so there's some back and forth and some repeat of that 2013 Senate confirmation hearing from when he was deputy, or when he became deputy of Department of Homeland Security. Otherwise, those seem rather smooth, those confirmation hearings that are taking place in the Senate. Let's go to Nick out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Nick.
Hello. Good morning.
How are you doing, sir? Good morning. Good morning.
I want to say that I'm a Trump supporter. I'm white, and I'm calling to say that Trump, it was the best president that the black people ever had, and you're turning now to a Biden.
Why are you saying that? How do you know he was the best president for black people, especially if you're white? You announced yourself as white, but how do you know that he was the best president for black people?
What I was going to say, you have a puppet now, controlled by these socialist communists. And we're all going to become
so where are you basing that off? Is that based in fact? You have
under this.
So wait a second, Nick, real quick. Is that based in fact? You have like evidence that President Biden is controlled by socialists and communists. Where are you getting that information?
It's clear all the people that have been put in charge in the cabinet are all communists.
How do you know that? How do you know that? Well, where is that being based off of? Where are you getting that information? No, I'm real curious. Where are you getting that information?
I'm getting it from MSNBC, the communist network. Tell us.
How are you getting that from MSNBC? So MSNBC is basically reporting that the cabinet members are all from socialist organizations or from communist organizations.
Yes. They are.
Which is definitely not the case. I watch plenty of MSNBC, and I know plenty of other people. A lot of black people watch MSNBC, by the way, and that's just not the case. So, I mean, you can come on here and you can bold-faced lie all you want, but, I mean, where really, truly are you getting your information, or are you drawing those conclusions from?
$10 gasoline, we are not going to be able to speak our minds. And all conservatives.
You speaking your mind, but listen, hey, bruh, you speaking your mind right now. You speaking your mind, and plus you just announced that you're white. Like, so you came on the program announcing that you're white, so you could, presumably, I don't know, consciously or subconsciously, so you could announce that, well, I have the privilege, I have the floor. I mean, I don't get this, particularly this argument from white conservatives or from white nationalists and Trump supporters that, you know, you're losing your right to free speech, because you guys got like all kinds of platforms that you own. You've got American society. That's been your megaphone since the inception of the country. I don't get it. You know, while you had other groups of people enslaved, or while certain folks, certain ancestors of yours were engaged in genocidal activity against the Native Americans. So I don't get this whole argument or notion, Nick, that you don't have a platform to speak on.
I'm an ethnic minority. Don't play that game with me.
I'm not playing a game. You're playing a game by calling into the station saying, you know, I'm giving you a platform to speak your piece, but you're saying that you're not going to have a right to speak.
Get the truth from people like you. They're not going to get the truth from radio stations like you. And I'm going to tell the good black people of Philadelphia that they should watch out, and they're going to get screwed. They're going to be screwed badly.
So they weren't screwed. We weren't screwed before.
No, things were getting better before.
How are things getting better? 400,000 people. Okay, Nick, I just want you to humor me here. I really am curious about this and kind of where you're coming from. How are things getting better? Over 400,000 people that we know of dead from coronavirus, from a pandemic that didn't even need to become a pandemic in the first place. But, you know, your president mismanaged it, neglected it criminally, literally. And we've got millions of people, untold millions of people infected. The economy's in a tailspin. I don't get that, Nick. I mean, how were things better before? What's that?
No, if you go back to before the COVID virus hit, we were on a great streak. I would go to these wholesale
from 8 years, and it doesn't. None of that is built overnight. From 8 years of the Obama administration managing the Great Recession. So yeah, and that's what happens, and that new President Trump inherited that. That's a statement of fact.
So don't tell me that the black people don't have it good.
How do the black? I don't understand how the black people have it good. How do black people have it good, generally speaking, especially since black people are the ones disproportionately, not just disproportionately hit by COVID infections and deaths, but also by permanent unemployment. Hey, Nick, thanks so much, though. Thanks for listening and calling in. But you know, more power to you for peddling lies on talk radio. All right, let's take a break. We'll keep the phone lines open, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
You're fired.
Did you know you can use LIHEAP to pay your PICO bill? Last year, PICO customers received almost $17 million in free LIHEAP support. This year, take advantage. This deal is first come, first served. Apply now. Call 800-34-HELP-4.
Tune in every Saturday at 6 p.m. to Recovery Talk 101 with your host, Rick Ford, talking about addiction, treatment, and recovery, right here on WURD Radio. Reality Check with Charles Ellison, right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Thanks everyone for listening and also watching us on WURD TV. Appreciate everyone hanging in there. We do have Simon Clark with us. Simon Clark, Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress, will be on in the next several minutes. We will have him shortly. I want to ask about the situation as far as security in the nation's capital, what that looks like. Get his perspective on that. Simon is a longtime national security expert, so we like to always get his insights on that, and also his insights and his worries, his concerns, because he's researched quite a bit on that. And we've had him on the program before to talk about the domestic terrorist threat. We've had him on the program talking about that long before there was that attack on January 6th. Let me go to Scott out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Scott, good morning.
Yeah, hey, good morning. I just wanted to commend you on the way you dealt with that last caller, by allowing him to actually speak, even though he was talking nonsense, you allowed him to speak, and he pretty much hung himself, But this is what, they've done by letting these people come out of the woodwork, But this is how we have to deal with them, We have to deal with them that way because they
have to deal with them with facts.
Not us.
It's just facts, statement of facts. It's like none of what he was saying was true. It was just bold-faced lies to the point where he got desperate and he was like, I heard that on MSNBC. Like, no, you didn't.
Right.
Like,
It was. Because I watched MSNBC, so I knew you lies. So you're right. Yeah. But I just wanted to commend you on that because that's what we need. We need to hold our manners when dealing with them. We have to so that the others can see. Because that's what they did in the Capitol, we got to thank Trump for what he did. Really. Because what they did in that Capitol, it made the other white folks see that this is what we're talking about.
Right.
This is what we're talking about. You're shooting us, and you're talking. You're asking these guys, could you please come down from there? And but you're shooting us. You killed a little 12-year-old kid in the park with a gun.
Yeah, you did.
So, but thanks. I appreciate that call.
No, I appreciate you, Scott. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate that support as well. And Scott is very much right. I mean, and I've always said that we've seen those pivotal moments, those tipping point moments. It's just when you go back to the civil rights movement, and that's where you started to see a lot of headway made on pieces of legislation like Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, where you suddenly had many whites starting to support the mission of civil rights leaders, people like Dr. King. We just got through an entire weekend of observance of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. It was after, horrific tragedies like the killing of the 3 civil rights workers in Philadelphia, Mississippi, or we have those moments like the showing of Emmett Till's body, the treatment of WURD when they see these very vivid visuals of black people being mistreated. Black people being mistreated at protests, having water hoses fired at them. German shepherds also let loose on them. So, we had kind of interesting sort of similar moments during the 2020 election, for example, watching the armed young white man out in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in cold blood, shooting 3 people. So, then they notice, when they see that kind of unpredictable and violent armed white nationalism, people get scared. White people get scared, when they see that attack on the U.S. Capitol, then people start coming around. But you see those pivotal moments, and I think that explains at least some folks, exercising some good sense and unelecting, voting out President Donald Trump, understanding that it's the real gravity or the enormity of the situation. Still a lot of work to do. Still a ton of work to do. By no means, none of this is perfect now. It doesn't mean suddenly this is sort of like a fantasy movie and we've entered a good space. Things are still very uncertain, but we've got to continue that good work. Go to today's B-Note, thebnote.com, thebnote.com. I've pinned a joint composition with one of our contributors, one of our regular contributors here on Reality Check, Dr. G.S. Potter, who's contributing editor for thebnote.com, which is the companion magazine to Reality Check. What should Biden do? Start simply with good governance. So that's the latest joint composition from the both of us. That just popped up a little less than an hour ago at thebnote.com. What should Biden do? Start simply with good governance. And so it explains what sort of path he should take and what should be the message, what should be the mission. We lay that out there at thebnote.com. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines remain open at 215. Just get your thoughts, get your reactions. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. We're expecting formal inaugural festivities or activities to take place, to start taking place at 11:30. The actual swearing-in ceremony to happen at noon today. So that, and you'll be able to see and hear that live on WURD. Simon Clark, Senior Fellow with the Center for American Progress, now joins us here on Reality Check. And he's in Washington, D.C., presumably. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information from our partners. Simon, how are you doing? Happy New Year. Happy Inauguration Day.
Indeed. We've got 1 hour and 15 minutes to go. And counting.
All right. 1 hour and 15 minutes and counting. Absolutely. So your thoughts on what security's been like in the nation's capital? Is it like anything you've ever seen before? It's unlike anything I've seen. And I've been in Washington for a long time.
States.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You think it's appropriate enough? Do you think it's extensive enough?
Yes. I think they've done from everything I can see, at least, a very good job. I was quite proud to be part of a group organized by Secure Families Initiative this weekend to bring food and power bars and coffee drinks to the National Guard, who are keeping us safe and keeping the President-elect and the Vice President-elect safe. They are good, patriotic young men and women who are really cold out there doing their duty. It's good to see that. It's sad that we have to see it, though.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling, and the tension is very thick in the air. Obviously, not a lot of people, particularly D.C. residents, always used to the presence of law enforcement all the time. There are multiple law enforcement agencies that are already in the nation's capital, but to have that heavy militarized presence, it does feel a bit uneasy. But people feel safer. How long do you think this is going to go on for, Simon? Because it's not just for inauguration. There's the potential of this going on for, what are you hearing, for quite some time, for the foreseeable future? What are you hearing?
So we published a piece at CAP earlier this week on the insurgency. And what we tried to do is to look at what's happening in the U.S. With the lens of other insurgencies that we have had to deal with over the last few decades. And our position, unfortunately, and Charles, this is going to sound really familiar to you because these are the same conversations that you and I have been having for a couple of years now. Our position is that this is early stages of an insurgency.
Wow.
And if we do it really, really well, we might be able to tamp it down over the next few years. But we have a problem. Now, we have a problem of political violence in this country, particularly white supremacist political violence in this country, which is going to be plaguing us for a while. And as I've written as well, in a way, the people most at risk right now are the honorable and patriotic Republicans, the elected Republicans who remembered their conscience and stood up to this attempt to destroy our democracy. And I hope they're being careful.
Wow. So, what we saw, that attack on the Capitol, that's just the tip of the iceberg, from what, and I did forget, thank you for reminding me. If you do get a chance, listeners, go to AmericanProgress.org. You do want to read this analysis entitled "The United States Could Be in the Early Days of a Domestic Insurgency." Go to AmericanProgress.org. What are the steps of this insurgency? We went through, kind of like the first step, or one of the first steps with the attack on the Capitol. But what are some of the actions? What are some of the future attacks that we might want to brace for, you think, Simon?
Look, 90% of all terrorist attacks in the U.S. have been white supremacist terrorist attacks in the last few years.
Yeah.
We've had an attempt to kidnap the governor of Michigan. We've had an attack on the state capitol in Michigan. We've had a number of assassinations. We've had a bunch of attempts to attack, particularly Black Lives Matter protests. And here I have to give the FBI some credit. They did a good job stopping a bunch of those attacks and infiltrating the groups. Insurgencies have a certain logic to them, a certain grammar to them. The effort to solidify your base, right, and bring people over to this view that violence is the only way forward, while trying to create an enemy that you can demonize. All the Antifa and BLM discussions are just around that. and then to create groups that you can hive off and continually inflame. This is pretty standard insurgency, and insurgencies tend to stick to their own techniques. So we do expect to see more pipe bombs. We do expect to see more attempted assassinations. We do expect to see more attacks.
Wow. You know, I'm real curious. Okay, so here's kind of like multiple questions wrapped into one, Simon, and we got to bring you back on so we can get you for more time to unpack this further. But do you feel like President Biden is up to the task, you know, just where his head is at as far as, you know, at least acknowledging, hey, we've got a domestic terror threat that's happening here. Is our national security apparatus up to the task? Is it resourced well enough? Is it stretched thin, especially while we're all dealing with a pandemic at the same time, to meet the challenges of this insurgency?
Well, that's great. That's about 15 different questions. Let me try and tackle a few of them in some kind of order. First of all, President Biden, which we can say in an hour and 10 minutes now, President-elect Biden started his campaign, decided to run for office because of Charlottesville. And we mustn't forget that. You know,
that's right.
His opening was about Charlottesville. His whole theme has been about restoring the soul of America. He was horrified by what he saw, and he felt he needed to react. And he unified the country around reacting, almost unified the country. So yes, absolutely the best possible person to do it, a unifying figure, somebody who doesn't inflame anyone, you know, everybody can trust Joe. And the team he's pulled around him is absolutely exceptional, starting with Merrick Garland, the man who prosecuted the Oklahoma City massacre. Remember, the last major white supremacist terrorist.
Good point.
He knows what he's doing. The national security team around him are absolutely superb. I know a lot of the people who are going into DHS couldn't be better. Now, having said all of that, the federal government cannot on its own solve this problem. It needs help from three other really, really important constituencies. Local and state policing, where we have really serious challenges with white supremacist infiltration, and we need to make substantial changes. The community at large, and particularly people who are on the more conservative end of the spectrum, but believe in the rule of law and believe in the Constitution, and we need to bring them over and make the violent attackers into pariahs. And that's specifically true about the white evangelical churches who need to speak up. And I'd like to hear much more from them. And then, and this I really want to put some praise here, the movement for Black Lives, which is being set up as the obvious opponent and has been so thoughtful and so sophisticated in its approach and so committed to peaceful demonstrations and speaking out in a way that supports American ideals, and therefore removing the oxygen from the far right. That's been really helpful, and that needs to continue.
Wow. One more question too, Simon. I wonder about how President Biden also coordinates with allies, because we've talked about this before, white nationalism, not just as a domestic threat, but as a global threat. You've researched this and studied this rather extensively. So what are those conversations going to be like about the domestic terror or the white nationalist threat with allies in Europe, with organizations like NATO, maybe involving the UN? What's that look like, you think?
So Avril Haines, the nominee for the Director of National Intelligence, talked about this in her confirmation hearing yesterday. We have some published evidence of some Russian involvement in far-right groups in the U.S., violent far-right groups in the U.S., the base, for example. There's some other really interesting work coming up about where the funding comes from for some of these groups, and there have been particularly cryptocurrency funds coming from Europe, which are a little unclear right now. Look, the fundamental problem here is a domestic one, and we need to solve it in our own society, and it's a deep-rooted one that goes right back to the founding of this country.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help when our enemies try to inflame divisions in this country. And if they do so by funding, supporting, helping violent white supremacists among us, We need to call that out, we need to stop it, and we need to make them pay a price, a very heavy price. And we do that with our allies. If you look at what happened in Sweden last year, where the Swedes found that the Russian secret services were funding violent far-right groups in Sweden and were able to call them out and stop it, that's very interesting. And I hope we'll see a lot of NATO and European, more generally, collaboration to stamp out that kind of mischief making.
All right. We've been talking with Simon Clark, senior fellow and national security expert at the Center for American Progress. He comes on occasionally. Simon, we're going to bring you back real soon, so we have a more extensive conversation about this threat. We need to continue to talk about it and come up with all sorts of plans to respond to it. Go to @SimonClark1965 on Twitter, on social media, keep track of what he's up to. And once again, go to the Center for American Progress's website, AmericanProgress.org. Read the latest briefing. The United States could be in the early days of a domestic insurgency. Essential reading. Simon, thanks for your time as always. Be safe out there.
Well, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Take care. All right. We are going to take a break. In the meantime, the Obamas have arrived. Former President Barack Obama and also former First Lady Michelle Obama have arrived at the White House, as well as the Clintons. Former First Family, former President Bill Clinton, former First Lady Hillary Clinton, and Secretary of State and Senator Hillary Clinton also arriving at the U.S. Capitol. So we're watching all of that take place. We're watching live footage of the inauguration ceremonies at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. I'm Charles Ellison, broadcasting to you live from Washington, D.C. We'll keep an eye on that while we take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, WURD family. Our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
Clark Roofing Company has over 30 years of quality roofing experience, providing exceptional customer service, honesty, and professionalism. Clark Roofing is a second-generation master roofer, installing top-quality roofing systems for commercial and residential properties across the tri-state area. For fast, dependable service, call 215-365-ROOF. That's 215-365-7663.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Vice President Mike Pence, outgoing Vice President Mike Pence, has also arrived at the Capitol. So, as we all know, President Trump will not be at the U.S. Capitol. He's probably touching down in Florida, but Vice President Mike Pence has agreed to be there for the inauguration ceremonies. That is a break with tradition and protocol, but it's definitely, as Joe Biden had joked earlier on, it's something that both is the one thing that he and President Trump have agreed on. Biden definitely doesn't want Trump there. Neither does anyone who's there at those inauguration ceremonies. And in fact, Republicans earlier on, Republican congressional leaders had opted not to join President Trump in his farewell ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base, but to be with incoming President Joe Biden instead at St. Matthew's Cathedral in downtown D.C. on M Street. So at the, during that early morning mass. So they joined him for that instead, and also joining him being there at the inauguration. We have now joining us Santita Jackson of the Santita Jackson Show in Chicago on WCPT Radio in Chicago, and also in Minneapolis as well. So you can definitely get more on Santita at Santita J, on social media, on Twitter, WCPT. I believe it's WCPT.com. I'll get that shortly if you want to check her out in the mornings there on Chicago's progressive talk radio station. Oh, that's WCPT 820, 820.com for live streams there. Santita, how are you doing? Happy New Year, happy Inauguration Day, all that good stuff.
Happy New Year, my dear friend. It's wonderful hearing your voice.
It is wonderful hearing you as well, and I hope the family's well. I hope your father is doing well, Santita. For those who don't know, Santita, also the daughter of Reverend Jesse Jackson, so that's where that Jackson name comes from. And I love being on your show,
Jackson.
Santita.
And Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson.
Mrs. That's right, and Mrs. Jackson as well. No, definitely,
That's
Mama
right.
Jackson gets all the props. She gets most of the props.
All of them. You know, actually, my father's doing well. I think since
Good.
he revealed that he has Parkinson's disease, and he has a very aggressive form of it. But he is moving, and he's gotten his vaccine, and my mother is watching him very, very closely because, you know, in this time of COVID, she literally is the first line of defense. You know, because my brothers and I move about. My sister's in Washington right now, but my brothers and I move about, and if we leave town, we don't see them for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So she absolutely gets no break. But he's doing well. He's doing very well. Thank you for asking.
That's good to know. Please send our best to him. So your thoughts on, you know, what you're seeing unfolding in Washington, D.C. I know there's a lot to talk about, but, you know, what I'm real curious to get from you, Santita, is your expectations from now this new Biden-Harris administration as it takes seat. What are you expecting? What do you want out of this new administration?
Well, you know, I think it really comes down to what it is that we need. We have who we want. Now we need to get what we need. In politics, really, you need to get what you need before you get who you want. But, you know, we voted for the Biden-Harris team in overwhelming numbers. Although, interestingly enough, Charles, and you know this better than anyone, you're one of the most astute people when it comes to politics and the Electoral College in particular. Biden did not win by 7 million votes. That's the popular vote. If you really break it down, he won by more than 60,000 votes through the Electoral College system, and we need to be mindful of that. That's part of what we saw on the 6th of January. There is a real push back. That having been said, look, we need an FDR moment. We need a Lincoln moment. But more, I mean, we need a really, really, really big moment, and that's going to take Americans moving. In the time of Lincoln, Americans were moving. Americans were engaged in fierce debate about slavery and private ownership. During FDR's time, you had fierce debates about economic systems. You saw a real strength of socialism coming forth in the United States. You even had a communist party that was very active in the United States. You had a lot of people really trying to make sense of a system that never favored the little person in the first place. And this is where we are right now. We're back to front. And so I think that we have got to have a Marshall Plan for COVID. But the thing is, what we've got to do more than that is now come up with a national health plan. Because if we had a national health plan, this could have been mitigated, interestingly enough, I think, in part. COVID really showed a lot of inequities in the United States, in our system. And it's been shocking for the world to see it, but that's the way it is. And so we need to have a real response, not just for vaccines, but for therapeutics. There's still vaccine hesitancy that is quite high, not just in the black community, but it's also in the white community. There's a great distrust. And what people need to do, I have several friends over the past couple of days who just shared with me they had just had bouts with COVID-19. I was really shocked. And they said, you know, but it wasn't that bad. But they were people who are also very, very health conscious.
Right.
Vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc.
Exactly.
So that can, you know, because the vaccine is a layer. That having been said, we also need to talk about universal basic income as we are in the Dr. King birthday season, which was something that he advocated for more than 50 years ago.
That's where the idea came from. A lot of people who are talking about it right now, including Andrew Yang. People make it seem like Andrew Yang came up with that idea. No, that was a Dr. King idea. That was a Dr. King platform.
Right. But he was smart enough and generous enough, and I think thoughtful enough about where the society will go if you have this much inequality and inequity. He picked it up, and we need to pick that up because I think that every human being in America needs a basic income, and that was something that Dr. King pushed for.
Yeah.
We need fair housing. We need food, clothing, housing, shelter. Our children have been out of school for a year. In Kenya, they took all the children back a year. That is to say, not even back a year, you must repeat the year that we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we really need to be right now. We need to think creatively. You're not going to be able to put 30 and 40 children in a classroom again. Well, that's a good thing, Charles. We need to have a Marshall Plan on public schools, and we need to be building schools. We need to be sending kids to school, college, so that they can become teachers, so that they can become nurses, so that you can have licensed practical nurses, so that you can have more physicians. We need more, not less. And I think now is the time for us to reimagine America and really make America what it was never really intended to be in the first place. That is, free and equal for all people, not just the 1%, the oligarchs who are having a fight with the monarchs.
Yeah.
We have to step this back and now include everybody. And
Santina, you've been in that arena. You've been in this arena long enough. And so how do we get there? How do we get to that point of more, not less, that Marshall Plan moment? If we're still having conversations, however, about, we have to unify with these extremists. We have to return to normalcy. Let's restore normalcy. It's really hard for people to accept that, and without any accountability either for not just this attack. I just said the person that came on before you is a national security expert, and he was saying, hey, you know what, listen, this is the first phase of an insurgency that's going on here, right?
Absolutely.
He's like, I hope you people understand that. So, and he's been in that business for a long time. So how do we get to that Marshall Plan moment, tackling and sifting through all of this?
Well, it's not going to be an easy lift. I mean, the fact is we are in the middle of an insurgency, but black people have been living in an insurgency and an emergency for 400 plus years.
True.
So that's not usual.
You know what that? Yeah. Welcome. That is absolutely true. Yeah. Welcome to the party.
What? Where did Emmett Till come from? And the 5,000 plus people at the lynching museum in Alabama. I mean, that's just what they discovered thus far. And if you average that out over the course of 400 years, that was almost 3 years ago. That's 1.2 lynchings a month every month we've been here. So, and that's not including what happened with the Spaniards, because we came over with them prior to 1619. But let me not dig down in the weeds.
That's
the
right.
fact is we're going to have to do grassroots organizing. That is what has always worked for us. We cannot, I think having this moment with Kamala Harris, well, she's a year behind me at Howard University. But, and I'm wearing my pearls today because, she's part of the Divine Nine. I'm a Delta. She's an AKA. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I think it's a great thing. And we should be proud of this. We should be proud in this moment. But we cannot stop here. What we have to do is know that we have different tracks. You had a Ralph Bunche track, right? And you had a Martin Luther King track and an A. Philip Randolph track. When A. Philip Randolph, who along with other black leaders went to FDR when there was a debate about black soldiers, was it black men should enlist and go into the Second World War because we were being treated horribly. We were being lynched left and right, couldn't get any jobs, living in abject poverty, being chased out of the South. It was a horrible time for us. And many blacks said, no, I'm not going to go to the Second World War, so thus the debates began. So part of the negotiation was to go meet with FDR, who desperately needed black soldiers. And he said, you know what? And they said, look, we're being lynched. We can't get jobs. We can't get loans. We can't. When we build Tulsas, we get burned out. You've got to do something. He said, you're absolutely right. Now go out and march and make me do it. Many of us have gotten very, very excited about these firsts because they are glamorous.
Yeah.
It's nice. But the fact is, the people who got us here, it was the Martin Luther Kings. It was a decidedly unglamorous, unsexy, it was the Amelia Boyntons. It was the Fannie Lou Hamers. It was the Cotton Readers. It was these nameless, faceless people or the people who worked down on the ground.
That's right.
The nameless, faceless people who got us here. Who we see today are the people who are reaping the fruit. But those who tended the roots, we've got to honor that too. And that's something that I think that's part of our own spiritual and political maturation, to understand that you don't have to, once you get a Kamala Harris or Barack Obama or Cory Booker or whoever, and we need them all. Once you get them, you don't abandon your black churches, your black preachers. They're the ones who still feed you when you're hungry, spiritually or otherwise. You cannot abandon these black institutions, whether they are persons or whether they're made of bricks and mortar. So we've got to do both. And I think that in the moment, in the excitement of 2008, we abandoned. And we do that. You know, we kind of move from what's next to what's new, and from what's new to what's next. And we have to become more institutionally minded. And I say that with all the love that I have in my heart for our people. We have to build upon, not walk past.
Yeah.
So it's going to take us going from door to door, and you're going to have to go beyond the cyber world. We're going to have to get out here and pound the pavement, Charles. We need to support the B note. Why? Because you speak for us and you speak to our issues from our perspective.
Thank you.
I miss Ebony and Jet. Which was not just black-oriented, but it was black-owned.
Me too.
And every week and every month, I knew what we were doing, where we were. I could speak to Dr. Alvin Toussaint up at Harvard, and he was going to tell me psychologically, from a psychiatrist's perspective, what I needed to know about black love, about raising my black children, because it was John and Eunice Johnson's highest aspiration that black people get well, that we would say that black is beautiful, not that black is ugly and nasty.
That's right.
That's why we were ebony. That's why we were jet black. We were all of those things. Wantu Waziri, use Afro Sheen. Beautiful people use Afro Sheen. We're going to have to get back to those things.
Also, Santu, while we have you for a few more moments before we head into the inauguration ceremony soon, how does the new administration, the new president, also the vice president, I think she's going to play a much more pivotal role. It's like the point that Peter Groff was making earlier on this program when we had him on, and he was saying that, we tend to forget about the relationships that Kamala Harris might have nurtured while in the Senate, because, it was for Joe Biden hasn't been in the Senate for over a dozen years. Kamala Harris was just there the other day, just yesterday, right?
Sure.
And we need to look at that. But how do you negotiate with, not trying to be too flippant here, but how do you negotiate with terrorists, folks who are supporting extremist movements, who are Republicans? How do you people who are giving these insurrectionist tours throughout the U.S. Capitol the day before the attack on January 6th. But there has to be some semblance at the end of the day of governance in order for us to reach those Marshall Plan-like goals.
Well, I think that we have to go beyond being Democrats and being Republicans and seek to save the democracy and save the republic. It's not that all Republicans did not support the insurrection on the Capitol. And like all Democrats are not supportive of our racial justice movement. Okay?
Yeah.
And our fight for equity. And we have to start speaking to people, not about them, not around them, not over them, not under them, not down to them. We have to start speaking to them. And we have to make a decision that we're all going to be grown people here. We're all going to be Americans, and say, okay, now when you lead an insurgency, or when you are insurgents, and you are looking for congresspersons on the Hill, first of all, look, I had Ray McGovern on my show, the former CIA analyst from the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. He briefed every president in the 80s, top-level CIA analyst. He's retired now. He said on any given day there are 2,300 Capitol Police on that campus, on the Hill.
That's right.
On that day there were 400 to 500. That was not something that the people in the crowd who went to see President Trump down Pennsylvania Avenue, they didn't make that call. Somebody else made that call. When the head of the Capitol Police asked the Pentagon for some backup, there was none forthcoming. This is way above my pay grade. Okay? So we're going to have to be willing to ask some tough questions and not shy away. We can't just say, oh, well, we just got to get a COVID-19 package. No. You had some people who did something that was very, very dangerous. And there's a reason that they had to vet the National Guard, because there's a lot of people who feel that way. What we need to do is ask them, what are you seeing? Because I might not be seeing this your way, but I do want to hear you. Remember, Dr. King did say, riots are the language of the unheard. And we, too, Charles, have been unheard. I don't want to become what my oppressor has been to me. I want to be mature enough to hear you. And I think that we can find some agreement with some good people who can say, now, you know you were wrong, and we must prosecute this. Not persecute you, but prosecute.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think she can negotiate it, but she must also know that there are some people who've been in this zip code a long time, because she's not been in the Senate long, and she's been in public life more than 20 years. But there's some people who've been in public life 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and who've had to negotiate. You can't be in Washington and not talk to Vernon Jordan, for example. You can't get around that. I mean, and there's some other people who know who's who, what's what. And you need to talk to them.
Yeah.
And you have to let everybody know you're doing it, but you certainly need to understand, before I get into radio, I'm going to talk to you. If I want to go into journalism, I'm going to talk to you, because you've been in this space a long time and no one does it better.
Wow. I appreciate it. You always you make me blush, Santita Jackson. You always leave me with food for thought too. Just dropping nuggets of wisdom. So we're going to bring you back soon enough. Santita Jackson, everyone, is host, executive producer of the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT Radio, Progressive Talk in Chicago. Also, I did get it right, Minneapolis, or is it Milwaukee?
That's right. Minneapolis, St. Paul. But you're also going to be on with me in the morning. That's
right, tomorrow morning. I can't wait.
Yes.
So I'll be on tomorrow morning on Santita Jackson's show, tomorrow early in the morning, WCPT820.com at Santita Jackson. Santita, thanks so much as always. Always appreciate your reflections and insights and wisdom. So it's great guidance for me, too. So thank you so much. I need to talk to you more often. So take care. Be safe out there.
I love you. Can't wait to speak with you, too. And I love you, Philly.
Thank you. Much love back at you, Santita. Thank you. Take care. All right, let's take a break. The Bidens have arrived at the inaugural ceremony. Let's take a break, and probably when we come back, you will be hearing live feed from the U.S. Capitol during this inauguration day in Washington, D.C. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
You know that feeling? Like every door is closing and you just can't see a way out? Being unemployed, underemployed, or just out of school can feel like that. But when you find the right tools, suddenly, everything just clicks. FindSomethingNew.org offers resources that help develop new skills that can position you for careers in today's growing industries, from healthcare and manufacturing to cybersecurity and alternative energy. Find your path to a new career at FindSomethingNew.org. A message from the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We are here live on the home of Black Talk Media, and we're broadcasting to you live from Washington, D.C. You're going to hear more of that very shortly. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, former Democratic presidential candidate, is now speaking there at the Capitol. Everyone seems to be there and seated. Folks did some of the small talk and networking and catching up. That's happened. And so an introductory speech being given by Senator Amy Klobuchar. I'm Charles Ellison. You can catch us also at #WordOnPolitics. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com for more there. Why don't we go ahead and just tune in to the inauguration ceremony that's taking place in Washington, D.C. right now.
2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible, my friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we'd considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda till I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words: declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment. People all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the President-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag.
Thank you, Senator. You'll have to step for me. Thank you.
Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you in need, indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We are a people of many races, creeds, and colors, national backgrounds, cultures, and styles, now far more numerous and on land much vaster than when Archbishop John Carroll wrote his prayer for the inauguration of George Washington 232 years ago. Archbishop Carroll prayed that you, O Creator of all, would assist with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all, those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today, it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart, so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga.
WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
broad stripes and bright stars.